during the daytime or at night, nor on the ground or in the sky. Grant me that my death not be brought about by any being other than those created by you, nor by any weapon, nor by any human being or animal. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Hiranyakasipu was very much afraid of Vishnu's becoming an animal to kill him, because his brother had been killed by Vishnu when the Lord took the shape of a boar. He was therefore very careful to guard against all kinds of animals. But even without taking the shape of an animal, Vishnu could kill him by hurling his Sudarshan Chakra, which can go anywhere without the Lord's physical presence. Therefore, Hiranyakasipu was careful to guard against all kinds of weapons. He guarded against all kinds of time, space, and countries, because he was afraid of being killed by someone else in another land. There are many other planets, higher and lower, and therefore he prayed for the benediction of not being killed by any resident of any of these planets. There are three original deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara. Hiranyakasipu knew that Brahma would not kill him, but he also wanted not to be killed by Lord Vishnu or Lord Shiva. Consequently, he prayed for such a benediction. Thus, Hiranyakasipu thought himself securely protected from any kind of death caused by any living entity within this universe. He also carefully guarded against natural death, which might take place within his house or outside of the house. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Parishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitayane Nantar Bahir Diva Noktam Anyasmara Pichayudhai Na Bhuma Nambare Mrityur Na Naraya Namargaya Rapi. Grant me that I not die within any residence or outside any residence, during the daytime or at night, nor on the ground or in the sky. Grant me that my death not be brought by any being other than those created by you, nor by any weapon, nor by any human being or animal. So it seems to me that Lord Vishnu didn't, follow all of these boons that Hiranyakasipu was given by Brahma. Usually that's what we say. All of these things that Lord Nrsingadev did, that they satisfied the benedictions. But we see here one of them that's given, Anyasmat, from any others beyond Lord Brahma. And Prabhupada specifically says in the purport that beyond Lord Brahma is Vishnu and Maheshwara. So he wasn't supposed to be killed by Vishnu. That was one of the benedictions. So apparently Lord Vishnu didn't care what Lord Brahma had to say. He came as Lord Nrsingadev and he killed him. So of course that's the Lord's supremacy. There was a purport earlier in this chapter where Prabhupada says essentially the idea that's there in the purport is that it really doesn't matter what your complaints are against God. There's nothing you can do about it. We have, of course, our picture of God. We know who Krishna is, revealed to us in the scriptures and through the acharyas, as a loving person. And when we always put everything into that context. We don't understand something. It may seem unjust, especially in our own lives. Why did this happen? People say, why did this happen to me? So we always, even if we don't always understand exactly what's going on, we say, well, it's Krishna's mercy. We know that essentially God is a loving being. He's a loving person. Why does that appeal to us? That's one question. Why do we think of God as loving? When people, philosophers challenge this idea that God is, the argument to give against God, that how could there be a God when He allows these horrible things to go on? So the premise of that is they believe, well, if there's a God, He must be a loving person. How could He not be a loving person? How could He not be a just person? Well, He doesn't have to be. He can be anything He wants to be. And there's not much you can do about it. In fact, in the Bible, you kind of get that sometimes, that God doesn't seem to be very loving at all. He does kinds of nasty things. So we can protest all we want, but if God is not loving, there's not much we can do about it. If He wants to be a tyrant, what can we can protest, but our protestations aren't going to do us much good. So the point here is that God is completely free to do anything that He wants. This, of course, comes up in the Rasa Leela also. For Maharaj Parikshit is hearing about Krishna is doing these things, Rasa Leela, this apparently sexual affairs going on with God. What? He's supposed to be God. How can He do these things? So he's asking. Of course, it said that he's not really asking on his own behalf, but in case others who are listening may get the wrong idea. So he's asking, how can we had this idea of God as being completely moral, so how can He act in this way, beyond morality as we understand it? So the answer of Shukadeva Goswami is that those who are greatly powerful, but basically they can do anything they want. They're above the laws. That shows their power. Rather than this being a disqualification for Krishna, it shows one of His great qualifications, that He's so powerful, He can do anything that He wants. Even if you don't like it, that doesn't matter. Your tiny brain, you can't comprehend the magnitude of God, so sometimes He may do something that will startle you somewhat. And you won't be able to figure it out. This, of course, the Jiva Goswami says that God must possess achintya shakti. He has to be able to do things that you can't figure out. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, or after the battle, when Bhishma Dev was offering advice to Yudhishthira and others, he says like that, because the question is, how could the Pandavas, they're great devotees of the Lord, how is it that they suffered so much? This is another example of, well, if God is so great and wonderful and powerful, why are His devotees suffering? He should take care of them. I don't want to worship of God if He doesn't take care of me. Sometimes people have this idea that Krishna doesn't take care of His own people sometimes, so I think I'm going to worship somebody else. So this kind of selfish idea is there. But what does Bhishma Dev says? He doesn't say, yeah, you're right, Krishna's really cruel and I give up Krishna. No, he says, who can understand? He's so great. Even great sages, they inquire exhaustively. They spend their whole life, all of their energy, trying to understand God. Many lifetimes. Bahunam janmanam ante. Trying to understand God. And still, they can't really understand Him fully. Of course, we can know so much because of what Krishna has revealed, and because of the efforts of these persons. Sometimes I think of this, how we know sometimes we meet people and we talk to them something philosophy, and for a moment they're talking philosophically, and it's as if, yes, I do this all the time. But we know they don't, practically never, until they meet a Hare Krishna devotee, they never think philosophically, practically. Our whole civilization is like that. People don't really think about the big questions. But we're tapping into a source of knowledge or a civilization where so many people were doing this. At least the Brahmins and so many sages. We have nice descriptions in some of our books, especially the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, of sages. They would just go live in the forest, move their whole family there, have their little ashram, and what would the sage do during the day? He'd have his Sandhya, his worship of the Lord at 3 times of the day especially, and then he would meditate and study the scriptures, try to understand. And of course the yogis, they would go off and live in the snow, in a cave somewhere, and meditate and try to understand. Their whole energy, their whole concentration, they wanted so much to understand what is reality, what is the absolute truth. So of course we disparage that in some way. We say, yes, it's just philosophical speculation. They're just speculating. But at least we can understand the attempt. We can value that attempt. Imagine people were so serious, just give up everything. Go, leave all of civilization.